Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, the King of Fighters 15 for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. After releasing a beta version of what will become the full release that we have right now, the King of Fighters 15 roars into the scene, not with the most unexpected in terms of gameplay mechanics and mode offerings. In terms of the gameplay, there are mechanics both new and old that return. A lot of the features and the gameplay functionalities from the previous King of Fighters return here, including the ability to spin 2 EX bars to activate the max modes that really buffs up a player's character if they activate it, armor through certain special attacks and even regular attacks, and of course really extend those combos that could be the anchor point to win these 3-on-3 battles or 1-on-1 battles depending on what mode you're playing in. For those who don't know, as I just mentioned, the King of Fighters games are built on the idea of these 3-on-3 teams elimination fights. So when you have one character fall in a round, that character is replaced by the next person in line on the team until all 3 opponents are defeated. But of course you can play 1-on-1 as well. Other systems that return from the previous games include the parry system known as the Shatter Strike, that is great for trying to debilitate opponents that have activated max mode because you're able to parry certain attacks that may stop combo beginners or launchers. There's also the return of the auto combo system that I was both a fan of and I understood why people didn't like in the previous King of Fighters. And one of the reasons for that is the fact that you can just tap a series of strike buttons, be it the light punch or the light kick or even the heavy punch and the heavy kick, and start these combos that can end in devastating fashion. The reason I was a fan of this in the previous game is because it's a great entry point for those who want to learn and figure out how you can do those combos manually or extend those combos manually. But I also understood why people didn't like it, because you could utilize these auto combos to really get in on opponents that should be able to do better than you, who have learned the combos, and get damaging effects without really trying that hard. And one of the things that I noticed when it came to King of Fighters 14 that I've noticed is a big difference in 15 is the fact, to me, the auto combos are actually more powerful when it comes to branching off into super maneuvers than they were in the previous game. Even though they were beneficial in King of Fighters 14, it felt like you were dumbing down your ability to do damage if you stuck to auto combos. Whereas this, it feels like they have pretty much evened it out, that auto combo damage is very similar to regular combo damage if you did it manually. One of the big things I talked about when I played the beta was the fact that, one, you could not play ranked mode because of it being locked in the beta, and of course it's available in the full release. Gamers can set up their team or single player character that they will be forced to play with no matter the circumstance, as long as you set that up in ranked mode. And gamers who are able to string together a series of wins will eventually rank up after the initial tutorial fight, where you have to fight the AI, and that will determine what rank you're at. From a mode offering perspective, casual match is just like every other casual match or player match you've seen in the past, where you're matched up with any player if you choose to that doesn't have a similar rank or does have a similar rank. Room, however, has been greatly changed from King of Fighters 14. In the previous King of Fighters games, there was a room that was available that could usually have at least 4 matches going on at a time. Instead, now it is set up very similar to Grand Blue Versus, where there's the lobby host taking on a variety of players, or the player that defeats the lobby host playing other players that are waiting to play. Very similar to like King of the Hill mode as seen in the Mortal Kombat games. Even though there are different gameplay options beyond just single and versus, why this was made the choice when it came to the room presentation over what we had in the previous game is beyond me. It makes rooms not really be fun unless you're playing with a friend or with a group of people that you already know. Waiting around for your turn and just watching fights play out, and then the potential of the game actually disconnecting or somebody getting disconnected in general and having to start all over again is very frustrating, very annoying, and very disappointing, considering they had a template that worked perfectly fine in the past game. Now, while you can give the hosting duties to another player if you are the host, if you're not, you're screwed if the host does drop out or doesn't give hosting duties to someone else, or the room just disbands. In correlation with the room system are the options to have single player fights, team versus, or party mode, which is a mode where players team up and are able to fight in this round-robin challenge featuring players taking control of specific characters that they've chosen. Depending on how many players are in the room and actually are participating, some players may have to fight twice instead of just once. Then there's the draft versus, which is a very interesting concept where the players can only pick certain characters as long as that character hasn't been picked. Say if I wanted to pick Maya and someone already picked her, I can't pick Maya, I have to figure out another character to play with. There's also the online training option, as well as just the leaderboard and replay watching. Overall, when it comes to the online capabilities, that's the biggest thing that was an improvement from the beta, where it was a lot of lag and jitteriness depending on the fights. I really haven't had any issues when it comes to lag outside of some fights before the round begins, before they announce round 1, where the game will really lag out. But after that announcement, when everything comes together, I've had nothing but buttery smooth fights. But what about if you don't want to be online? What about if you just want to play against the computer? As per the norm, the SNK games have single player options, but there are not that many. When it comes to taking on the AI, of course, depending on the difficulty, you'll be facing some button input reading AI or some reasonable AI, depending on the difficulty you've set it at. But beyond that, the mode offering is pretty much slim to none. The story mode is essentially arcade mode with a few cutscenes and of course a final cutscene depending on if you have an actual team, then you'll get the team ending, and if you figured out a secret team, you'll get a secret team ending. Of course there's versus, you can play against the computer or against a friend locally, or even watch the computer fight itself. Tutorial is pretty much bare bones as it was in the beta, with just basic attacks and strikes and information about the system was both new and old. Mission mode is probably one of the biggest disappointments, because I was hoping that this would be the character tutorial for each character you could play as and learn about their strategies, their move sets. Unfortunately, each character only has 5 combos you can learn through mission mode. Overall, the King of Fighters 15 is just more of what we've loved about the King of Fighters franchise in general. A very, very good gameplay base, and most importantly when it comes to this version, a very consistent internet quality that is top tier. Thankfully, I've had no real issues when it comes to fighting online, which is a blessing if there ever was one. If you've enjoyed the King of Fighters games, if you enjoy 2D fighters based and rooted in the systems that we've seen for the past 2 decades, if you're not a 2D fighting gamer, then of course the King of Fighters won't give you what you want. But if you have some intrigue into the genre, this is a great place to start, and more importantly, it's a great place to learn and grow and become a better gamer if you enjoy fighting games. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. The King of Fighters 15 for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Now if you don't mind, I'm going to take my crew back out onto the online realm. Joe, Mai, and Athena, and hopefully I can make any opponent that gets in my way have no choice but to say, "Oh Lordy."